the Spectrum of Us podcast.
Chaos and comedy, where we explore life on the spectrum.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Jennifer.
In each episode, we dive deep into life surrounding the neurodivergent, exploring life, complex and often comical dynamics between society, family, education, and more.
Through building understanding, we hope to build a community. So like and subscribe for more chaos and comedy as we explore life behind the scenes of neurodiversity.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today, Kev?
Well, I thought we would talk about for those parents of those neurodivergent kids and for the school districts who service them and the NPAs who service those kids and even
What's
members.
an NPA?
That's a non-public entity?
Agency.
Agency.
Yeah.
That would be NPE. So non-public agency. But I think entity sounds better. But non-public agency to service those kids on the spectrum and with behavior disorders. That we send those little ones out, and we try our best to educate those students with how to deal and live within society. But we don't do a lot of work on teaching society how to deal with those little ones. There's little to no information out there. A lot of times things are misunderstood. And as a police officer for almost 30 years in the city of Seattle, once my eyes got opened up to what a neurodivergent person looks like, that what a person...
Even though you're a neurodivergent person.
Undiagnosed. We listen to all those people, those things. I lost my train of thought. Excuse me. So, because you got me. But we don't. What I want to say is we don't spend a lot of time talking about how to deal with those little ones. And I'm like,
Well, I think it's not just the little ones. It's people.
The people.
Because
yeah.
When you and I first got together, how I approached a human presenting a certain way in crisis and how you approach them.
Oh, it's drastically
We were
different.
like 180.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of conversations about what if they have autism and they're, in crisis, and you're like, how am I supposed to know that? And I'm like, well, there's tells, there's things like, why do you just do it this way, or why do you do it that way? And starting to realize my background teaches me that when I see a human in a certain type of crisis, I'll be like, are they maybe on the spectrum? Are they having a mental health crisis? Are they having a drug crisis? So I'm going from behavior and from a mental health kind of approach. You're going from a compliance approach. They're disturbing the peace, and we need to keep everybody around them safe. I'm looking at them, and yes, I want to keep everybody around them safe, but I'm literally in that that split second first approach. Police officers looking at them like they're disturbing the peace. There's a problem here. It's causing a problem. It could be unsafe for the people around them and myself. And, the why, I don't think is the first thing that you guys kind of go to, because the first thing that you're going to is let's get them under control.
Yeah, because it can't be, because on the way police work has been done up until this point, that's why I said up until this point, it's still moving. It may not actually progress the way it should, but it's starting to at least turn, because we're starting to recognize it. Even like myself, it wasn't until you and I got together and we started having these conversations that it kind of opened my eyes. Because as a young police officer coming through the police academy, you get probably a day to a day and a half on
mental
health crisis. Maybe
and it's probably so high level, and it doesn't even go into autism or
well,
anything.
it does go, but it doesn't go deep enough. We'll hear those words, but they don't tell you like what it looks like. And then by the time you're actually,
Well, and you're in like 90 days of police academy, kind of on average. Right?
yeah,
like
well,
3 months.
about 6 months is what.
6 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a 6 month period of time, you maybe get, like, I'll be generous, 3 days.
Yeah. So
3 days of some information about those types of things.
3 days of 2 to 3 hours each, right? So
Okay.
let's call it 9 hours total
Right. Out of 6 months.
out of 6 months.
So when you think about the weight, like, what is the majority of your training on
Oh,
when
the
you're
law.
in the academy?
The law.
The law and
The law and physical defense of yourself and others.
right. And what's the most important thing? What's your first priority?
No, your
Keep yourself,
your physical self.
right?
It's the
Keep yourself
your
safe.
officer presence and all that. The moment that an officer comes in, communication is key. But we as a society don't communicate well
No.
with each other, which is the reason. And we're going right into that because a neurodivergent person is communicating, but a way that me as a police officer doesn't understand.
Yeah, yeah.
I
'cause
take it as something different.
Well, I was gonna say, because how I learned para body language and what those tells, signs, body language means. How you learned it, what you learned, some of those exact same signs mean, are two different things. Like we just talked about this yesterday. Like me looking off to the side, because my brain doesn't think, talk, and listen at the same time. You, as a police officer, see that, and you see evasive. You
Yeah.
see, trying to avoid making eye
Avoidance,
contact,
which leads to-
non-compliance. You're hiding something, and when I see somebody do that, I'm like, oh, they must be like me, where it's hard to like make eye contact. So I can't really tell the difference between if somebody's being evasive or if they're being if they're lying versus they're just neurodivergent, and neither can you.
No,
really.
it is.
It's just what we assume it is.
What we assume. And that, what the other thing is, you're matched. As a police officer, I am not going to match your energy. I'm going to go above it.
Yeah,
So
always.
if you go up because you're neurodivergent, and that's just because
Yeah,
you're
escalating.
confused.
So yeah, a
and
neurodivergent is escalating.
escalating.
And guess what you do?
I go
You're
up.
going to go above,
Above
it,
it.
right? But my training says go below.
Yeah.
My training says bring it down, because this was the best visual I got when my oldest was so little. They said, imagine you're in a tornado. And so everything, right? Chairs and debris and homes and everything, they're flying in a circle, right? And they're out. And you're in the middle of the tornado, so you're scared because like all this stuff is spinning violently around you. And you get a vision out, right? And your mom is standing out there. If you look out there and your mom is screaming and she's panicked and stuff, and you're like, oh shit, I'm in trouble, this is not okay, right? But if you look out there and mom's like, you're good, you're fine, everything's fine, just stay where you are, your nervous system starts to calm down, right? So the person outside the circle is your grounder. They're either going to ground you or they're going to inflame you. So as the mom, as the person outside the tornado, I have it like firmly inground in me. When I see somebody in a tornado, I don't care if I really am panicking inside, like, oh shit, Houston, we got a problem. I know that it's only going to make it worse if I get high with them. So I have to squash every instinct inside me to react. And I have to show and also feel, because they feel your feelings. So they absorb everything. you can't just fake it. You have to find a way in your own body to be like, they're fine, you're good, man, I'm right here, I got you. You know, and help ground them so that they can come down. But your training says
exact opposite. You know, you go in and you talk about that if you don't go above, because there are those people out there who will come at you and attack.
Right.
So you have to be able to control them.
And
you
also
control
show
them
that
in your
you're
presence.
bigger
Yes.
and stronger.
And bigger and stronger.
And you can overpower them so that hopefully they don't try.
But that neurodivergent kid doesn't.
They don't have self-preservation.
They don't have self-preservation.
In that moment.
They don't understand that, and it's wild for me now because prior to coming into this world and having like the lights turned on for me, and I see it now. Like when I meet people, when I actually replay incidents in my head, and I go, oh, well, you know what? That person was probably on the spectrum.
Right.
Like that we're in with. When you people who are prone to violence for no apparent reason, you go,
Right.
oh, you know, that person's just a mean-spirited, violent person. Oh, you know, or we get the he or she is crazy.
Oh yeah.
When in reality, they're on the spectrum. They're on the spectrum, and the way I'm communicating with them is frustrating them to the point because I'm not getting what they're trying to give out.
Right.
Which happens with everybody.
And also,
That happens
your
with everybody.
energy has risen.
Yeah.
So you're escalating them, and you don't even know that
Yeah.
you're escalating them. So you're part of the problem. And you don't mean to be. You're trying because you're training, because it is legitimate and it's fair, right? Like, if you walk up to a gang member, a predator, like what you used to call it, like, you know, a criminal is a predator. And so if you come up against a predator, you need to be the bigger, stronger predator.
Yes.
That's just like animal kingdom, right? Like, survival, right? Like, I've got to be the bigger, stronger predator. I've got to have more force, more strength, more ability, so that the other predator senses and sees, "Oh, I'm not going to mess with that one. That's the wrong one."
Yeah.
But for the neurodivergent human, there's no self-preservation in that moment. So for them, it's not about animal instinct. For them, it's opposite. Their nervous system has been triggered where they are in fight or flight.
Yep.
They're either and they're fighting or they're flighting, right? They're running, and you're like, oh, they must have done something wrong. When really it could be their nervous system is like, I'm unsafe, I'm gonna die,
Right.
and they're running, right? Or I'm unsafe, I'm gonna die, so I have to fight. And it's simply a complete miscommunication and misunderstanding of body language and situation and what's going on in the moment.
It's if I was in charge of the police
Of the
academy, not the world. I don't want the world. I just would love an opportunity to talk to people at police academies. I would say, we need more on mental health, but not just mental health.
Right, we keep focusing on mental health, and mental health is important, right? But I look at a lot of the mental health stuff, and I'm like, I come at it from a systematic approach almost, where it's like, okay, so first let's weed out the people who aren't neurodivergent, right? And then let's look at mental health, right? And then let's look at drug addiction. Then you have what's left, right? Those people are the people who the police academy training, I think, is appropriate for, right? And they do touch on mental health crisis. They do touch on drug addiction crisis, because I think those are a little bit easier to identify. It's pretty easy to see somebody's cracked out and tweaking. You know, it's pretty easy to see when somebody's hallucinating and they are talking about things that nobody else sees. Yeah. Those are pretty easy to teach police officers to identify, you know, teach anybody how to identify. But neurodivergence is not easy to identify.
No, because like we were talking about, we have been talking about, is that they don't present You present and you go, oh, okay, and then you assume that their behavior is a certain way.
If you can't say it's from drugs or mental health that you can see, then police officers, I really feel like they're really just taught those three, right? And neurodivergence is just
No,
it's
it's
an
not.
afterthought.
It's not even. At
It's
least
like
it wasn't when I was coming up. Mind you, I was
health.
30 years ago. They didn't have that.
Right, and even now, obviously I haven't been through a police academy, so I don't know, what they're teaching these days. But I do know what we all see out in society, and I do, we have access to a lot of police officers, obviously from your relationships. So I know what they tell us, right? And I know that what they tell us is that, or what I'm hearing them say is that, yeah, there's a little bit, but still, the focus is on the criminal, the straightforward criminal, the mental health problem, and the drug addiction problem, and we're leaving out a substantial piece of the, community that you guys are going to come across. And my favorite part is, the new kind of new wave of thinking, which is, let's put community resource officers or SROs or people who are unarmed, who are, trained, not trained. Like maybe they'll get a mental health professional, but
to
they don't even get a
in the
freaking
car.
police academy, right?
Yeah.
And then they start sending those people out to deal with the mental health, the drug addiction, we don't know, we just think that, we shouldn't send police officers to these things.
Yes.
But those people are not getting appropriate training. And, that unit is not getting appropriate. I mean, and the reason I know this is because I work in the field that could be giving that appropriate training. And nobody's asking us.
Nobody's calling.
No police department across the United States is asking special education people to come in and talk to them. They want all the mental health professionals. They want drug addiction counselors. They, they're asking them to come help and train and whatever. But nobody's asking special ed people to come in and talk with. They're not asking families. They're not asking. If you're not asking the people who are dealing with neurodivergent people, you're not training.
No, it is.
I don't care what you think you're doing.
It's so intricate and so
nuanced
because even in domestic violence, if you are aware of neurodivergence, you know that child is prone to violence. If you ask a member of the family, if you ask the family, which member of the family receives the violence the most, it's always the mom, which is domestic violence, we call it. So that's what we think we're seeing.
Because it's another family member hurting a family member. Definition of domestic violence.
Yes.
However, if my child has autism and they are, one of the things they do is hit, kick, bite, pull, push, attack, break things in the house, property damage, right? These are all things that are considered against the law at a certain level.
Yes.
And so police respond, and because maybe somebody outside the home, maybe another person in the family just thinks this is not right, and they don't care, because that happens too. People within the families don't care that there's maybe a legitimate reason this is happening, and it's not domestic violence, because domestic violence is about power and control. Domestic violence is about trying to take somebody's autonomy away from them. It's about trying to control another human being. It is a crime, and it's horrible. But being in the middle of a crisis with someone on the spectrum, or someone who is having, a different understanding of what's going on, that it doesn't have to do with power and control, or it has to do with, maybe it has to do with control because they're black and white.
Yeah.
And they don't understand, they do feel like they're losing control, but not in the same way as, the jackass who, is just trying to keep his wife from leaving the house.
No, but to speak on that a little bit, because it'll often be not the entire family that gets be the victim of those.
It's a lot of times the mom.
A lot of times mom.
Yeah, well, because so also the kid, the most likely people to be abused are neurodiverse kids.
Yeah.
By their own family members. And it's because as humans, when we lose our ability to navigate a situation through words, understanding, change in behavior, we go to putting our hands on.
Yeah.
So when we're afraid, we put our hands on, and so a lot of parents don't understand what's going on with their kids, and they just think their kid's being bad, so they beat them, or they hit them, or they, put them in their room and lock the door, and these things are abusive, to the kid, but also the parent is lacking any other ability. Usually they truly don't understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
They may not even know that their kid has this thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happens is, mom tends to be the softest one in the room. She's probably the smallest. She's probably, less likely to be aggressive back towards, the child. And she also, strength-wise, may not be able to participate in a hold. So let's say, for example, myself, I'm 5'5", and, I'm not full of muscles over here, I'm just a girl. And, I had these boys who are huge and they're strong, and they're not huge, like, weight-wise, they're just real tall, right? So, I knew at a very young age with them, like, I'm going to be overpowered when they're very young. And, that creates a vulnerability in the family,
Mm-hmm.
So, it's scary to be the girl, the mom, the smaller one. It happens to younger siblings too, because they're smaller.
Yeah.
Because, there is a little bit of the, their awareness on an instinctual level of who's smaller than them.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, though, I will say, outside of the family, one of the things I see really, really interestingly, and I love it, is that we can have some of the most violent neurodiverse kids, and you put a kid who's more vulnerable, smaller than them, in with them, and most people's instinct is, they beat up kids bigger than them. Don't put a little kid in with them. And all of a sudden, they will 180 into the biggest protector.
Yeah.
The most nurturing, most protective human being you've ever seen in your life. But you would have never guessed it, because all you've seen them do is be violent towards people bigger than them. So your assumption is, give them somebody smaller. I mean, that's like snack.
Yeah.
But within the family, it tends to always be going after whoever, and it's not really even, they're like, oh, let me go after that person because I can overpower him. It's just, I'm having a crisis, and when I'm in crisis with this person, I can overpower them.
Mm-hmm.
So like with Jack, he was able to communicate really, really well at a very young age what's going on with him. And that's a gift, because if they can explain to you what's going on, then, and he can't do it in the moment, but he can tell me afterwards, we can have conversations and he can talk about what the feelings were. And he was able to identify that he needs pressure when he starts getting out of control. It's touchy and tricky because you got to figure out when that moment is where he'll let you give pressure, or where you can give pressure. But when you can get to that moment where you give pressure, he wants you to put him in a hold, because his body feels so out of control that he can't bring it under control. And so he can't verbalize these things in the moment, but he's like, please put me in a hold and hold me down until my nervous system calms down, right? And so he will fight. It looks horrible. It feels horrible, because, you know, you got to put him in a full-on hold, and, you know, the whole time he's fighting it, and he's, you know, let go of me, and he's saying every nasty thing, you know, that can possibly be said, and you know, he's crying, and you're both hot and, you know, sweaty. And up until 6 months ago, you know, he's 12 now, up until about 6 months ago, I could hold him, and I could get him to feeling safe again. And I'd have to do, you know, I mean, the only reason, I was the only one allowed to do it in the family, because I'm the only one trained to do it. And we don't, holds are such a scary, sensitive subject.
Yeah.
You know, and so you don't want one done wrong, and you don't want trauma done by a hold. So, you know, being as that was me, I'm the only one who can bring him back to safety. And then about 6 months ago, you know, he was able to overpower me. And I remember in that moment going, shit. Because, you know, nobody else is going to be able to put him in a hold. Nobody else is going to be able to do that for him. And now he's too big for me to do it. And, you know, or too strong. And so I can't do this anymore, because now it will cause trauma, because if he hurts me, he's going to feel bad about that later.
Yeah.
And that's going to hurt his self-esteem and everything. And also I don't want to get hurt.
No.
I don't even want to be in the hold, you know. But then on top of it, we don't want, you know, we're trying to figure out, well, so how do we help him bring his own body under control at this point?
Well, a part of that,
at 12, when you're about to go through like crazy hormones.
Yeah, part of that also is, I think, through my understanding and the journey that we're on, is the fact that you can do it as opposed to anybody else. One, like you said, because you're trained, but also because he trusts you.
Yeah.
So when you see other people will say, and I actually had a family member say this when they were around us, they were like, well, he doesn't seem to have a problem when Jennifer's not around.
Yeah.
So I think it's
You're
her.
the problem.
She's the problem, because he's fine with everybody else. And I had to like tell people, I said, you have to understand that he trusts Jennifer. Mm-hmm. He knows he doesn't have to mask.
He doesn't have to mask ever at all.
He can be his true self around mom, which is the reason why mom is often the focal, because they know that mom will forgive them.
Yeah, mom's going to love him no matter what.
Mom's going to love him no matter what.
Yeah.
And so everyone else.
And if that's not mom in a family, it could be grandma. Mm-hmm. It could be an auntie. It could be, you know, a sibling. But whoever that person is in the family, they're the one who are going to be the target. A lot of times it's mom, you know. I mean, but I've seen it be a grandma. I've seen it be, you know, I've been that same person at school with students, you know, where I'm the one that they lash out at because they know that I'm going to love them no matter what. Like, I just keep coming back.
Yeah.
You know, and the other people, they don't lash out at, but they also don't really give a fuck. You know what I mean? They're just like, I'm not going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
They'll do way more for me, but they'll also give me more shit. And so, you know, that's why, like, I feel like it's really important. There's learned helplessness with these people where if you give them a one-on-one, you know, they stop learning how to take care of themselves and do things for themselves and everything. So, you know, because somebody's doing it for them, right? If I think for you, you don't have to think for yourself. If I do for you, you don't have to do for yourself. So we have to be careful of that in special ed and giving the supports and the assistance. If I give you a crutch for too long, you're going to think you always need the crutch, and you'll never realize you could walk just fine without the crutch. So there is that, but I also believe that, you know, as a part of building trust for these kids, they need to have a consistent person that is somebody that they know will keep coming back and keep working through it to the other side. So, you know, you've got to give them the crutch when the leg's broken.
Mm-hmm.
If you make them walk on it right away, it's going to be broke forever. So, you know, I mean, it might heal, but it's going to heal wrong too. So, you know, that's kind of the difference between like how we do it at our school versus like public school.
Yeah.
They have, you know, rotating one-on-ones coming in, you know, the turnover's high, you know, you got a lot of vacation, you got sick time, calling out, we switch personnel all the time. The people are not matched to the kids, you know, it's just a body, right? And so that's why we're not seeing the success that we'd like to see in the public school. And I don't think it's their fault. You know, they're dealing with unions. And, you know, the unions are protecting the employee rights, and they're, you know, the employee rights come before the kid rights. And so, you know, what are they supposed to do about that? You know, so it's not a lack of want on the school's part, the humans who are working in the schools, but the union, you know, by nature is there to protect the employees' rights. Yeah. And those are in direct conflict with what the kids' needs are. And so, you know, I don't know how they could ever provide the same person, hire somebody who fits that kid's needs in the beginning, right? Eventually the kids, yes, the objective is we want to get to a place where a kid can work with anybody, but right now they can't, and that's triggering all kinds of things. So, you know, and that's part of the problem when police approach them, right? You're not known to me. I don't trust anybody anymore.
Yeah, no,
you know, I trust maybe one person in my family, and everybody else is a threat.
I will say that as a police officer, because people always ask me, they go, what's the most tragic thing you've ever seen? What's the ugliest thing? What's the most violent? What's the scariest thing? I think
humans are so
I know this is a question, and these are ranging from 6 to 30, and it's the same question. What's the
scariest thing you ever
saw? What's the nastiest thing you've seen? It is the most tragic thing I heard was, and it happens a lot in this country, is my son was in crisis. He was harming the family, and we called 911 because we needed help.
Yeah.
Help comes, and the officers get there, and my son is escalating, and I just wanted someone to help me get my son under control so we could get him to the hospital. And then it escalated to a point where the officer had to use their firearm. Right.
Or any type of like really, you know, scary, harmful force. Right. They used a baton.
They used a taser. They pepper sprayed them. Yeah. Because, you know, people will.
Because it's like, why couldn't you just like get them down, get them cuffed, get them to the hospital? Yeah. Why couldn't that happen?
And it's because of the communication between that the officer showed up, right? They're saying my son, who's, like you said, the word you used, mentally ill. They don't say my son is neurodivergent on the spectrum, and then give us the rundown on what the officers are coming into. They go, my son is out of control. And our training is out of control person, we're going to treat a certain person way.
So walk into the situation, You're walking up and you're going, domestic violence.
Yes.
Okay, training tells me this is the most dangerous situation as a police officer I can walk into.
Yes.
And so, okay, first of all, I'm walking into a domestic violence situation. I don't know what's going on the other side of that door. I just know that this family's in crisis and
Right.
somebody's being violent.
Right. They say out of control. They don't say out of control because he could be on. If
could
I
be
see
on
out of control,
drugs,
he could be on
he
drugs.
could be,
he could have a schizophrenic and have a mental
Right.
break.
Right.
All these things are happening that we don't know. So, and unfortunately, by the time we have to interact with the son or daughter, that's not enough time for you to communicate to me, hey, this is what we've got.
Well, maybe I just got hit upside the head by them,
Yeah.
and my bell's rung,
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
I'm just like,
Or
help.
you're not the one who called.
That's
You're
what I'm
not the
saying.
one, someone
And
else
usually I'm not-
called.
somebody else called,
and they come
even
in
if it's
there.
somebody in the family, but maybe it's a younger sibling who can't verbalize, my brother has autism, blah, 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 blah. They're just scared because they just saw, mom get clocked upside the head. Maybe they even know what's going on, with their brother, but they saw mom get clocked upside the head, fall to the ground, and they're like, this is too scary. I'm calling 911. They call 911, and, all 911 hears is little kid scared, older brother hitting mom.
You hear
Mom's
screaming
on-
and the
yeah.
escalation over the air. They go,
You don't know
step it
who's
up, step
screaming.
it up, step it up.
Yeah.
Go now. Then the next thing they say, are there any weapons in the house?
Yeah.
And they go, we don't have any guns, but they're mostly, he's in the kitchen and there are knives in there.
Yeah.
Now, in the officer head, that's an armed person out of control.
Yeah.
So they're already coming in, I need to be
Right.
on my firearm, my head. I'm thinking about that. And it's that communication.
That's the thing. It's like, I can see both sides. Like, I can see as a police officer what you're coming into and what it looks like and how you've been prepped for the scene. And it's nobody's fault necessarily.
No.
But, everybody's in crisis.
Everybody's in crisis.
Everybody's doing the best they can. But, lacking necessary information, right?
Right.
So
And I challenge anybody
wouldn't
who
it be
says
amazing?
that you can give out under pressure, and
Oh,
under
yeah.
stress, that you're able to give out
Yeah.
a detailed accounting
Yeah.
of anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
No,
care
no.
who you are.
Right. Savannah and I have been in crisis with Jack, and he was literally emptying my entire pantry. Had run after us in the house. So both of us we were the only, we were the two safest people for him, and she's the poor kid. She's since she was probably 12 years old, we knew that aside from me, she was the only other one who could deal with him.
Yeah.
And communicate with him and try to manage him, right? And so, he's like 10 or 11, and he's in crisis, and he's running us down in the house, which sounds so ludicrous, but all of the de-escalation tactics had failed. De-escalation was not occurring.
Yeah.
And so then the next step when we dealt with Jack that we would do was to isolate yourself from him, and because if you pull yourself away, then he loses the gasoline for the fire, but it also ignites another fire because now he's mad you took his feed away. So we went to step 2. De-escalation's not working. We're gonna go put ourselves in a room and close the door to keep ourselves safe. So we do that, and he goes to the pantry, and I don't know how it started. I think he had started by just grabbing random things before the pantry, that he was throwing at the door. And the next thing we know, he's pulling everything out of the pantry, and he's throwing it across the room. And the pantry was big and full of a lot of stuff. And he's, and when we've called 911, right? When we put ourselves in the room and he got worse, we were like, oh, okay, give it a minute, see if it'll bring down, or if he's going to get worse. And then when he started emptying the pantry, I was like, we need help. We're out of options. And I called 911, and it took like 45 minutes for them to get there. Right? And I had to have Savannah call 911 because I didn't have my phone on me. And so she called 911, but she doesn't really know what to say.
Yeah.
So I'm like yelling at her, like, say, first thing out of your mouth, say, my brother has autism. He's in crisis. We're in a bedroom, locked in a bedroom, because he's throwing things at us and we're kind of trapped and we need help, But I'm like, don't give the crisis first. Give his condition first. And I'm like, and she's just like, what do I say again? What do I say again? What do I say again? And I'm just like, oh my God, this is a nightmare, because I had neglected to like really train her on that beforehand. It's second nature to me because I've had to make, enough of these calls for students or, whatever, where it comes out of my mouth first. The first thing you say is, we have someone in our home who has autism and they're in crisis. We need someone to respond who can deal with people with autism. You got to really put that out there. And 911 operators hate it. They're like, what's the crisis? What's the problem? Basically, get to the point. And you're like, that's a really important point because what I don't want is you coming guns drawn.
Yeah.
Because I knew the minute they pulled up and he realized the police were there, he would stop. I knew with him that he would. But as long as they weren't coming, we were going to have, this was going to be ongoing. So, coming in guns drawn would have been like scary, awful, like could have been catastrophic.
Well, let me just say, and I don't want to get off topic, but let me just say that, because I think it needs to be said. For anyone out there who are listening and may think, well, what he needed was for somebody to grab him up by the scruff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Smack him about that. And this, you come from me, who was raised that way. My grandparents were not about sparing the rod, because they were not going to spoil the child. They didn't believe in that. Or they did believe in that, I should say. And I believed in that too, until I lived with a neurodivergent child. And I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, that does not work. That it would not get him back to center.
Well,
it won't. It will not.
We talked about it, before, and we'll talk about it in another episode. But short-term compliance versus long-term buy-in, and you can beat anybody into submission, right? But what is that going to provide for you long-term? Because all that teaches, all that's going to actually do is teach that kid, that person who's doing the thing, is scary, and I can't do that in front of them because I will get my ass beat. But that doesn't mean that they agree that they shouldn't do that thing. That doesn't mean that they're going to see that that's not an okay thing to do, or that they're going to understand why it's important, to try to control themselves or try to learn how to do that themselves. So they're just going to do that same thing with other people who aren't going to beat their ass.
No,
and the whole world can't beat your ass.
But I think it's important for people to understand that he had that escalation, and kids have those escalations because they have, whether it's their feelings, their emotions, something inside that they can't release. Yeah. And they're fighting themselves, and they're struggling with it.
His body's out of control. It's the same as the tornado again.
Yeah. If you don't allow him to do that, he could really, really hurt himself or others. So it's a need that he has to get. He has to release that.
When we tried to control it, we had him trying to jump out of windows. Yeah. Jump out of cars, whatever, because you're the more you escalate, the more they escalate. they lose all ability to understand that what they're doing right now is not just an escape from the situation, it's an escape from life.
Yeah.
You're not coming back from jumping out of a window. You know, you're going to die, or you're going to really hurt yourself, you know, tragically. So, like, they don't have the ability to go, okay, let me not do that, right? Whereas, you know, a typical human, you know, there's a limit, because your self-preservation kicks in.
Right on.
Right? And so you're like, well, you know, let me not play chicken in this, you know, in this opportunity, because I don't want to die. But, you know, these kids aren't bluffing.
Yeah.
They're not bluffing. They're not. You're assuming that they're thinking, having any rational thought.
Yeah.
And they're not. They're in their, you know.
Oh, they're blacked out.
They're in the total, like, animal instinct, like.
Yeah.
No higher level thinking, no.
Right. They call it code black in law enforcement. When you go into code black,
Yeah.
you're not thinking at all. All that processing stops.
Yeah, shut down.
Shut down.
And they have a look, you know. A lot of times you'll hear people describe, and then, you know, they just kind of like
Had the
checked out. They look
distant-
like distant, or
Yeah.
they look like, what did you guys call it, the something yard stare?
1,000-yard stare.
1,000-yard stare. You know, there's that, or there's, I used to say, like, it looked like, on my ex-husband or my sons, where I would see it, it was literally like their pupils got really large, and you saw like a total change, and you were like, you knew you were in a dangerous place with them, because they are unaware. They will not remember later.
And I'm glad you said that, because in law enforcement, you know, those what we call pre-fight indicators.
Yeah.
Like we study that. Like, these are the things
Yeah.
that letting you know that the fight's about to come. And one of the pre-fight indicators is a 1,000-yard stare, which in the case of for someone who's neurodivergent, meaning that they're not thinking and they're checked out. So that officer is thinking, oh, the fight's on, I need to say, you know, we go into officer safety, making sure that you protect yourself, because if you're gone, you can't save anybody else.
Right.
And that could lead to a really, really unnecessary
Because
interaction.
maybe you just need to give them space.
Yeah.
Because when I see that now,
But law enforcement doesn't give us space.
no, you guys close in.
Yeah. We don't give up ground that we take.
Yeah. It's really, it's opposite.
That way of thinking is the wrong way to think, because
Yeah.
a neurodivergent kid, because I've seen it. We're not talking conjecture. I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
I saw what giving space does.
Yeah.
I saw that after that incident that you described, that when he came down, the how he felt, that he didn't remember it, and he felt the guilt,
shame,
the shame that he had. It was
self-hatred,
yeah, it was
because he doesn't
intense.
remember all of it. He remembers bits and pieces of it, but he sees the aftermath, and he knows it was him. And the guilt and shame and everything that comes from that is so overwhelming, you know, that by the time, you know, he's like 10, 11 years old, he's suffering with massive depression and anxiety. And part of the anxiety is his fear of his own self. You know, and his inability to control his own self, his own body, his own, you know, like fear of your own brain, of your own body, of your own, you know, you're trapped inside yourself. You can't get away from you.
Yo, come on,
And to be a child, and you can't even like identify those feelings, but that's what's going on.
having all that in your head and then throw on puberty on top of that. Woo! That's
about
heavy.
that another time.
That's heavy. That's the heaviness of that. As an adult, that's heavy.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 11, 12-year-olds.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yes. Well,
Any police departments out there want some training?
Yeah,
We're your people.
Reach out. And so anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Please comment, like, and share. And if you want to reach out to us, especially if you need some training, please contact us on social.